The heavy fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan keeps on escalating. Both sides contest who's responsible for the fighting this time around. Both sides have lost civilians and soldiers. Last year, both countries agreed to take concrete measures to prepare the populations for peace. Yet in the last fortnight, we've now been reporting on the longest period of violence in the region for 30 years. And this time, the conflict has now actively drawn in other countries, increasing the danger of a regional conflict. What are the next steps for both countries? How far and for how long will the hostilities go? And at what cost? And as the international community repeatedly calls for a ceasefire, what would it take to engineer peace? And is that even still possible? Well, Euronews have invited both leaders for this unique programme, and they've accepted to lay out their strategies side by side. So we're asking all of those questions to the Prime Minister of Armenia and the President of Azerbaijan. Joining us now is the President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev. Thank you for your time. Look, there has been strong and repeated international pressure for a ceasefire and to de-escalate tensions. Fighting's ongoing, if not escalating. What is your objective now in the conflict?
Ceasefire cannot be achieved unilaterally. It must be a bilateral decision, and also it must be implemented on the ground. As you know, Armenia attacked us on the 27th of September, attacking our military positions and damaging our infrastructure, attacking civilians. So far, we have almost 30 civilians killed as a result of Armenian attack, including the ballistic missiles and cluster bombs. So our counterattack was successful. We managed to liberate part of the occupied territories. And our main objective is restoration of territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. Armenia must give us a timetable for withdrawal of their troops from the occupied territories. And this timetable must be approved by the Minsk Group co-chairs, the countries which are mediators. And after that, I think the effort must be imposed on achieving the ceasefire.
The countries that you're referencing have repeatedly asked for a ceasefire. Why isn't that happening now? Why are you not pushing for that to happen immediately?
Because we've been a subject of attack for many times. During the last 3 months, there have been 3 attacks on Azerbaijan. One in July on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan, far away from the region of Nagorno-Karabakh. And the goal of Armenia was to occupy new territories of Azerbaijan, and they did not manage to do it. Our army defeated them. Then August 23rd, they sent a sabotage group to commit terror acts against our civilians and military personnel. That also was a failure for them because the head of the sabotage group was detained, and he gives evidences exactly about what I'm saying. And in the end of September, they launched a massive attack on our villages and cities. I can tell you that up to today, we have almost 900 houses totally demolished or damaged, and many casualties and wounded people among civilians. And now, after Armenia is suffering a very bitter defeat, they're pleading for a ceasefire. They made violation of ceasefire themselves. They ignore United Nations Security Council resolutions which demand full, complete, immediate and unconditional withdrawal of Armenian troops. They want to keep status quo unchanged. And the Minsk Group co-chairs, United States, Russia and France, their presidents many times made a statement that status quo is unacceptable. Armenia ignored it. But now Azerbaijan itself is changing the status quo, and I think that will be an important step towards the soonest resolution of the conflict.
Mr. President, civilians have been killed on both sides of this conflict. How do you reconcile that with your aims?
Of course, we regret that civilians are being killed, and of course, we were not the purpose, we were not the source of this attack, because it was the first thing in the morning on the 27th of September, what they did. they attacked our cities and villages, and we had to respond. But our response mainly is, and primarily is, on their military positions, on their tanks and guns, and what we are doing on the battlefield is available in internet. Our drones and our other equipment demolished only military objectives on the occupied territories. Unfortunately, Armenia is using civilians in order to have more people on the ground, because the demographic situation is very bad, and we have video about the civilians being just next to the guns. And of course,
Armenia would be able to say, I'm sorry to interject, Mr. President, that civilians on their side have been killed in this fighting, and they would dispute exactly why it was that on the 27th of September, this violence flared up again. Let me bring you to a promise that your foreign minister made last year that said it was necessary to take concrete measures to prepare the populations for peace. What we are seeing right now is the opposite of that. How are you trying to limit the suffering of civilians?
You know, we are not responsible for this outbreak. As I said, we were the subject of a physical attack from Armenian army, which is situated on the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. Apart from that, the current Armenian regime did everything in order to destroy the negotiation process. Exactly 1 year ago, Armenian Prime Minister at a rally in the occupied area of Azerbaijan made a statement that Karabakh is Armenian. And that statement actually destroyed negotiation process, because the principles which are on the table and which are the basis for settlement, they demand the return of the occupied territories to Azerbaijan. And when Armenian Prime Minister says that there will be not a centimeter of land to return to Azerbaijan, when he says that Karabakh is Armenia, when they organize illegal settlement of foreign people on the occupied territories, which is a brutal violation of Geneva Convention, they destroy negotiation process. After that, in order to make us responsible for that, they attack us 3 times, July, August, and September. And when we beat them on the battlefield, they call everywhere, they make a plea to everyone, stop Azerbaijan. We want to stop, but we want occupation to stop. Therefore, the main message should be to Armenia. We are not on Armenian land, we are on our land. Our land.
One thing that Armenia will say is that Turkey is really providing quite a strong influence here, including supplying things like military aid. To what extent would you say Turkey are accelerating and pushing your country and your actions in this conflict?
This is absolutely false information. Turkey for us is a strong ally, partner and brotherly country. And of course, the statements express their position, and we're very grateful to Turkish government, the Turkish president, Turkish people for this support. But Turkey in no other way is involved in this conflict. Armenia, bringing such a fake news to the media, wants to diminish the capacity of Azerbaijani army. We are fighting ourselves. Yes, we purchase weapons from Turkey, but not only. Our main supply of weapons is not Turkey, and probably everybody knows about that. So the fact that we buy modern Turkish equipment, including the fighter drones, should not be a problem for anyone, because Armenia gets weapons free of charge. We pay for them, and Armenia gets free of charge. Turkey is no other way.
We keep talking about weapons, and we keep talking about fighting here. Is diplomacy still an option? Will you sit down and have talks with the Prime Minister of Armenia to find a different way out of this conflict?
I can tell you that during my term as a president, I had maybe tens of talks with 2 former Armenian presidents and the current Prime Minister. And during those previous debates, we made a substantial progress on negotiation table. We elaborated the principles which today are the basis for settlement of the conflict. And we were constructive. Negotiations are taking place since 1992. Can you imagine? For almost 30 years. And we were living with hopes Mediators were telling us that you should wait a little bit, there'll be more constructive approach from Armenian side. But when this prime minister came to power as a result of the coup d'etat 2 years ago, he destroyed completely negotiation process. And I had meetings with him many times. But these meetings were absolutely senseless. And he told me that they are not going to give territories back. They told me that Nagorno-Karabakh must be, adjusted to Armenia. So these absolutely unacceptable demands to me and also unacceptable for mediators. Armenian government should change their position, should refrain from maximalistic position, should stop telling that Karabakh is Armenia because this is not true and this is destroying negotiation process. And of course, we are going back. By the way, tomorrow, our foreign minister will be in Geneva meeting with ambassadors of the Minsk group. And as far as I know, Armenian foreign minister was supposed to go there in the beginning of the month, but he ignored that. He is not there. Our foreign minister is there. It shows who wants negotiations and who was just accusations against Azerbaijan.
President Aliyev, thank you for joining us on this special programme on Euronews. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Joining me now is the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan. Prime Minister, the UN, the Minsk Group, the EU, they have all called for an immediate ceasefire, yet the fighting continues. So can you explain to us what are you aiming to achieve here?
You see, the most important thing is that we welcome the international community and the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs' acknowledgement of what has been happening. We have welcomed the statements of the OSCE Minsk Group, the co-chair, the countries, presidents and foreign affairs ministers. Turkey has announced that Azerbaijan should not stop the hostilities, and Azerbaijan has essentially remained within the guidelines given to it by Turkey. And the statement today by the EU Commissioner for External Affairs confirms this situation. Bearing in mind that there are terrorist groups fighting on the Azerbaijani side, which are involved in the hostilities, who are recruited and transported to the conflict zone by Turkey, and the fact that the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, at the very moment that I'm speaking to you, are under an existential threat, because all the towns and villages are under constant shelling by rockets and missiles, including the capital city, Stepanakert. I think the international community in this situation should decisively act now and recognize the independence of Karabakh.
Azerbaijan's defence ministry have said that your forces are shelling some of its towns. We must be clear that there are civilian casualties on both sides of this. I'd like to understand, are you pursuing peace?
Absolutely. The Defence Army of Nagorno-Karabakh has made strikes, and the Defence Ministry of Nagorno-Karabakh clearly explained that the strikes had to be made because nothing else was possible. It was the only way to stop the Azerbaijani rocket attacks and the missile attacks against the towns and villages of Nagorno-Karabakh and against civilians.
There is no consensus from either side for who is responsible for the violence starting again on the 27th of September. You made a statement last year, your foreign minister, that you were going to prepare populations for peace. That is not what we're seeing. I'd like to understand to what extent you feel emboldened or at least supported to act because perhaps you feel that you are supported from Russia. To what extent is that driving some of your decisions and actions?
Peace has always been our primary and ultimate goal. From the day I was elected Prime Minister, I said we have to strive to find a solution that will be acceptable to the people of Armenia, the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, and the people of Azerbaijan. And I am the first leader involved in the negotiations who officially says any solution must be acceptable to the people of the other side as well. The whole problem is that Azerbaijan does not and has not accepted officially this approach. For them, the only solution is through the ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh, which, fully cleansed of Armenians, would fall completely under Azerbaijani control. This is a threat of genocide. Today, international terrorists are involved in the implementation of that genocide. They were recruited and brought to the region by Turkey. They are fighting on the side of Azerbaijan. And this fact has essentially been recognized already by countries in the region and a number of European countries. So I wish to highlight, if we want to stop the humanitarian catastrophe, if we want to stop this conflict growing any wider, the international community needs to show determination and recognize the independence of Nagorno-Karabakh.
The international community are also looking to your actions, and we must stress there are civilian casualties on both sides. People have died in Azerbaijan as a result of actions that you have overseen. What measures are you taking in this conflict to try and limit the suffering of people caught up in this violence?
Going back to your previous question, it's very important to set the record straight and ask who unleashed this attack. And I think in the international media and within the international community, there's sufficient information to know Armenia and Karabakh could not start this war, for the simple reason that we have no military tasks to accomplish here. The task we have is a political one. Azerbaijan is the one which in the last 15 years and in the last 15 days before this war, please allow me to finish, and in the 15 days preceding the war, and I am answering your question, if you will give me a minute, please. In the 15 years preceding the war, the 15 months, 15 weeks, 15 days and 15 hours preceding the war, Azerbaijan has constantly threatened to solve this issue by military means. This is no secret. Let's publicly analyze the statements which were made by Azerbaijan and Turkey. Let's publicly analyze why terrorists were brought to Azerbaijan, to the line of combat. What other purpose could there be for recruiting terrorists from another country, bringing them to one's country? If that country is not planning a military aggression, why would Azerbaijan agree to terrorists being transported to its territory? But we think the most important thing today is to stop the violence. And for this, Azerbaijan needs to stop its attacks. And of course, peace in the region. And the best tool for it, in our opinion, is the international community's recognition of the independence of Karabakh.
Are you prepared to stop the attacks?
Yes, of course. But this does not mean that we would wait and then let them come and commit genocide on our people. We have not attacked anyone. Our actions and the actions of Karabakh are only for self-defense. We haven't had and do not have the goal of killing anyone. Our only purpose is to protect the Armenian people from another genocide. Our purpose is self-defense.
What would be an acceptable resolution for you? Is there a different way of finding a resolution to this conflict which doesn't involve violence?
Our position has been and remains that the Karabakh issue cannot be solved through violence. No solution can be achieved through violence. But Azerbaijan's policy has been a plan to solve the Karabakh issue violently. Armenia has always been ready for compromise. Azerbaijan is the one which does not want in any way to compromise. They do not want compromise. Their only solution is that the Armenians of Karabakh, who have always been 80% plus of the population of Karabakh, should be displaced, and that they are going to get Karabakh through ethnic cleansing, and that the area becomes free of Armenians and a non-Armenian inhabited area. These people cannot just leave their homelands of thousands of years just because Azerbaijan demands they should. So they have to defend themselves, and they have the right to self-defense. There is no other aim for Nagorno-Karabakh here but self-defense.
Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, thank you very much for your time.
Yes, I'm sure.
As we've heard, the Minsk Group, the United Nations, the EU, they have all called for an immediate end to fighting. Neither side have stood down. Casualties on both sides continue to mount. For more coverage on this story, do stay with Euronews.